Welcome to Women and Resistance, a powerful podcast where we honor the courage, resilience, and revolutionary spirits of women across the globe. Hosted by Fubara Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, we uncover untold stories of defiance against systemic oppression, whether colonialism, racism, sexism, or economic injustice. From historic icons like Winnie Mandela and Fannie Lou Hamer to today's trailblazers, we shine a light upon those shaping a more just world. This is a call to honor the past, embrace the present, and build an empowered future. Yes, greetings, and welcome to another episode of Women and Resistance. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and this episode takes us to the French Caribbean island of Guadeloupe. And to understand who we're going to showcase tonight, introductions first. Sister Aya Fubara Eneli Esquire, before she goes into character, will be taking on the life of Mulâtresse Solitude. Who she is, what she's about, we're about to find out. And it promises to be a riveting lesson. And for those who would listen later on the audio version of it, I must say her story is truly a remarkable one. So, welcome, Madam Solitude.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for honoring our call. As we normally do it here, we tend to, help our guests explore their life. Give us an inkling of what it is to live during your times. And in your case, you lived on the French island of Guadeloupe. So, without further ado, could you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Apologies, I am
heavy with child.
Yes, and today I come to you from a time that I did not know then, but I know now, was the eve before I would bear my child. And so I don't apologize, but I do send forth the explanation that I am a little out of breath. They captured me. It was our last stand. Hills of Matombo. I will fill in the gaps. But we were being closed in on from every side, and we made a decision. It had been our mantra, live free or die. And so we made the decision to blow up Louis Delgrès, who was one of the leaders of what they will call the revolution, the revolt, the rebellion. He had a pipe, and the decision was made to blow up the gunpowder that we had left. We knew that that would result in our deaths, but we also knew that it would kill many, if not all, of the French troop who had pursued us. And so we set the gunpowder on fire, and a big explosion. According to them, we killed over 400 French men that day, but most of us perished as well. I did not. Was captured, wounded. I was spared initial execution when they executed some of the other survivors, because in their twisted minds, I was a slave bearing a child who belonged to a Frenchman, my supposed master, and therefore they wanted to spare my life until I brought forth another human being for them to enslave. Many men and women and children who were part of the resistance were blown up, and I gave considerable thought as to whether to take my own life in that prison cell. But my child, who has forever been lost in the history annals, I know she was a girl. She said she wanted to live. Such a blast should have killed both of us, or at least her, and I made the decision to have her anyway. And so you meet me on the eve of her birth, and what would happen the morning after I brought her into this world, and she was taken from my arms, barely getting any succor from my breast, is a tale that even they do not want to tell in its entirety. They simply, what was the word they used? Suppliced. They executed me with onlookers. But we should start at the beginning. That area is even known as French Guadeloupe is a tragedy because the Arawaks lived there and the Carib inhabited that area long before the white man with his God complex and greed showed up on those shores. The murderer Christopher Columbus, he landed there in 1493, and then France officially colonized that area in 1635, establishing a slave economy so brutal that most barely made it 7 years. That space alternated between French and British rule until 1816, and there was a final abolition of slavery, they say, in 1848. And then it became a French department in 1946.
The continuation.
I speak to you this evening, or whenever your people will watch this, from a place between memory and silence, between the breath of my mother, an African woman, and the breath of this child that I carry. I speak to you between Africa and the fire of Guadeloupe. You introduced me as La Mulâtresse Solitude.
Yes, I did.
How these people brand and stamp themselves all over us. La Mulâtresse, a name given by a world that tried to define me by my blood and hierarchy. I was not born of their categories. I do not answer to their categories. Some now call me Guadeloupe Solitude. I would rather accept that. I was born of violence, but I chose resistance. What I will share with you today has mostly not been written. See, because they are the record keepers. They write what they want us to know. And very little actually is written about me. A lot is conjecture. My story begins with my mother, an African girl, young woman, taken, kidnapped, not transported, not relocated, stolen. Most of the Africans who were dragged to Guadeloupe, they came from the western coast of the continent we call Africa. Senegambia, the Bight of Benin, the gold, that area used to be called the Gold Coast. Now we've reclaimed our name, Ghana. Regions that you now call Benin, Nigeria, and beyond. My people. They were farmers. They were warriors, mothers, healers, kings, daughters, and sons of great people. And then came what some in the world are now acknowledging is the greatest crime against humanity. My mother was stolen, maybe in war, or through betrayal, or maybe through the machinery of these Europeans and their greed that turned us, our African bodies, into currency. She was forced onto a ship, not a vessel of travel, a coffin with sails. This is not a mere story. You must take a journey back with me into the bowels of a ship. Do you know what it feels like? Be packed into darkness, bodies layered like cargo, chains biting into skin, the stench of waste, blood, vomit. Do you know what it's like to hear the key in the door and the steps and the rattling of more keys as they start to yank and pull up? The women, they are taken up to the deck, water thrown on, and then my mother was violated. I would use some other language, but I don't know if I'm allowed to here without it taking away from the story I have to tell you. Repeatedly, not once, not in secrecy, but a system where they owned you, or at least thought they did. And my mother's womb became a site of conquest. This child that I'm carrying, her father is a proud African man from the Congo. He did not live to see her. She will live her whole life as an offering. As they conquered my mother's body, they plot to conquer mine. Solitude, was a consequence of that violence. Today, my people use the word trauma. I was born of it, but I chose not to be defined by it. Listen carefully. Can you hear the sound? The crackling whip tearing into the flesh of another African. What is the use of crying out loud? We cry for people to hear. We cry to relieve the pressure of the pain. But if your cries will only bring you more pain. When the ships, these coffins, reached Guadeloupe, they did not arrive at salvation. It was another kind of death. My God, months treated worse than any animal that you ever saw in your homeland, even the ones that we were going to take to slaughter. And finally, the boat docks, and you wonder, will I be free? Is it my people? Rest us, and then you are offloaded. Did you put sugar in your tea? Was it in the jam that you spread on your bread? Sugar. That is what the island produced. And sugar demanded blood, and now they have unleashed an appetite for it amongst us, an appetite that is now killing us from a disease caused by too much consumption of the thing that had already claimed us. The cruelty of it all. And how much our ignorance costs us. They enslaved Africans like my mother. They worked from before sunrise until after sunset, cutting cane until their hands split open, carrying loads until their backs broke. And here my mother, with this pale child, they used to call me yellow all over my body, proof of my mother's violation. The punishment was constant, whippings and mutilation and execution. Families torn apart as easily as you would tear a leaf off a stalk. Yet even there, the resistance lived. It lived. My child lives. They say my mother died when I was 8 years old. Not surprising. Did I not tell you of the short lifespans of the enslaved Africans?
You did.
Solitude. I don't know if that's what my mother called me. But that is certainly for a child with an unknown father and a dead mother. But not all would submit forever to that whip. Some refused to remain. They fled into the mountains, into the forest. They are the ones we now call the Maroons. Communities of the escaped, warriors of the unseen. They built hidden villages, and in those villages, they preserved African traditions. And I found my way to one such Maroon community. We knew that our freedom could not be given. It had to be taken piece by piece, breath by breath. For me, resistance was never just theory. It wasn't just a word we bandied about back and forth. It was what we lived. It was the air we breathed. It was the water we drank. And in 1794, we were finally free. Or so we thought. We had 8 years where we worked to create our own existence as free people. But Napoleon was not done. He and his wife, Josephine, they wanted the wealth of their colonies back. And in May 1802, over 3,500 French troops landed on the island. He wanted to revoke our freedom, and we were expected to accept it, but we did not. Louis Delgrès, who had fought with the French against the British, he brought his skills to bear. So did Joseph Ignace and so many others. And I joined the revolution. And yes, I was pregnant, but I was not fighting in spite of my child. I was fighting because of my child. What future could I offer a life born into chains when I had tasted freedom? 3,500 troops armed with all kinds of artillery, cannons, the full weight of empire. But we had something cannot be manufactured or bought or sold. We had nothing to lose. Nothing left to lose. Live free or die was our mantra. The Battle of Matuba was on May 1902. After weeks of savage fighting, as they would call it, you always have to listen to their word.
Savage fighting.
500 of us, like I said to you, we were surrounded at the d'Anglemont plantation. We paid the ultimate sacrifice, live free or die, as we ignited our own gunpowder. The French rampaged through the island, by their own account, killing over 10,000 1,000 Guadeloupans. I had pledged to give my life. But this little one here, she gets to make her choice too. And she has chosen, in spite of all the odds. Let me tell you what they wrote about me. The only words that they wrote about the one they call La Mulâtresse Solitude. They said, La Mulâtresse Solitude was who came from Pointe Pitre to Basse Terre, was then in the Palermo camp. She let her hatred and fury burst out on all occasions. Of course they would say that. They who are the demons would try to demonize others.
Rejection.
They went on to write, she had rabbits, one of them having escaped. She armed herself with a pin, ran, pierced him, lifted him up, and presented him to the prison women. And they said, here she said, by mixing with her words the most offensive epithets, this is how I will treat you when it is time. And this unfortunate woman was about to become a mother.
We're trying to manufacture consent.
I'm an unfortunate woman. What are you? With Louis Delgrès and with Joseph Ignace and all the rest of the so-called rebels. It did not matter what mountains we had to climb, what hills, where we had to go. Pregnancy and all, I fought right alongside with them. We African women, we have been fighting for a long time. We must continue to fight. We are the ones who bear the children. We do not have the luxury to sit back and hope that someone else would come to save us. And after they took my baby from my arms, smirks on their faces as they unlocked the cell in which they held me, I stepped out, and those who knew me could not recognize me. I was 30 years old, and my hair had gone gray. I walked with my back straight, breast milk leaking from my breasts, staining my night shirt that they had me wear. I was not afraid. Soldiers, officials, colonists, and of course, all the enslaved Africans who they wanted to put fear into. Watching. From my periphery, I caught the sight. Some of my African sisters, muffled cries, tears running down their faces. I walked tall, even as the blood from giving birth just a few hours before began trickling down my legs. But I was not afraid because I understood and I understand, and I want you to understand something that they did not, that they still don't. You can kill a body, but you cannot kill an idea of freedom. You cannot kill a refusal. You cannot kill the spirit. How many buried under the rubble? How many scattered on the hills where they left them unburied for the wind and the animals in their own words? How many at the bottom of the sea? How many in Gaza today? How many in Sudan, in Congo? How many in Iran, in Yemen, in Lebanon? You can kill a body, but you cannot kill the spirit. They did everything to humiliate, hang me, and not even attempt to desecrate my body. As I stated, after the rebellion, over 10,000 of us killed. Slavery was fully reinstated in Guadeloupe so that you can have your sugar. Did you hear the story of one of my daughters?
Which one?
The one who went on a safari to Africa with the child of a colonizer. And supposedly, after a birthday and an engagement, now committed suicide. You chase after your colonizers. You chase after the very things that enslaved us because you've forgotten. I understand. I don't mean to question her. Her death is painful enough for her family. And yet, with this opportunity you've given me to share my story, I want to impress upon all of you the importance of remembering and choosing differently. Because to forget is to stay in a place of constant exploitation, a different kind of slavery with no chains. Do you know that the Haitian Revolution, what year was that? Do you remember?
1804.
Do you know that up until 1802, the people of Saint Domingue, now called Haiti, they were still thinking that they could somehow make peace with France. But when they heard in August of 1802 our revolt and the massacre that happened, they realized they could not in any way play around with the French. They could not believe anything. They realized that it was Napoleon's intention to re-enslave them all. And that is what strengthened their resolve. Up until that moment, there were warring factions amongst the black and the mulattoes. Some on one side, some on the other side. And it was the massacre of Guadeloupans.
You are listening to Women and Resistance with Fubara Eneli Esquire and Adesoji Iginla, where we honor the voices of women who have shaped history through courage and defiance. If you're finding these stories inspiring, take a moment to subscribe, share, and support this platform. Together, we amplify the voices that deserve to be heard. Now, back to the conversation.
That convinced them that if they did not unify,
this is what would happen to them. Yeah.
So when this story is told, even though we were thrown back into slavery, even though my child was given to the slave master, the murderer, the colonizer who claimed ownership over me, that was not the end of the story. Because our revolt helped to change the tide for another group of Black people, of African people. And their revolution impacted so many revolts that now took place all across the Western Hemisphere, including the United States of America. You must connect the dots. We are never defeated when we fight back. My death was not in vain, but I was forgotten for a while. Of course, I needed to be erased.
You're trouble.
I was dangerous.
Yeah.
I was a woman.
You were property as well.
I was Black, pregnant, rebellious. What if more Black women who cook the meals, who take care of their children, became as dangerous as I was? My existence and how I lived disrupted every narrative they wanted to maintain, including the fact that, as they would say, I was a mulâtresse, and I should, therefore, have used my skin color to protect whiteness in order to live a better life. So they erased me. For years, my story only existed in fragments, oral history, stories told from generation to generation quietly. It was not until the 20th century that I was brought back into the written history, largely through literature, historical reconstruction. There are musicals now that have been made about me. Musicals? But what can you expect when the system that killed me controls the record? But you cannot kill the spirit. And so today, you have allowed me to come and tell my story. How many of you are hearing my story for the first time? Tell me. And tell me what my story means to you. I want to know. Memory, spirit has a way of resisting if we but listen. Who in your lineage is trying to get you to listen, to remember? Today in Guadeloupe, there's a statue in my honor. France unveiled a national memorial statue of solitude in Paris, one of the first dedicated to a Black woman who resisted slavery. And of the thousands of statues that litter France, only 40 are dedicated to women. And I believe I might be the only Black one. Now schools and streets and cultural programs carry my name. but do you carry the spirit? Do you understand live free or die? Artists and writers and historians, they are telling my story everywhere. I am now studied in the context of, what do they call it? Resistance.
Resistance.
And yet, I'm still not known as I should be, am I? There was even a movement to include me in the French pantheon, the official halls of power.
Become an icon of the state.
That is not relevant to me because I stand tall among those who understand resistance. I stand with the unnamed and the unknown. I stand with those whose blood still fertilizes the soil. Pantheons built by empires, they're limited compared to the pantheon that lives with us and what we share. And that is where I am. What became of my child? She too is lost to the annals of history. But I believe that she lived long enough to see slavery abolished in Guadeloupe. I believe that she lived long enough to die a free woman. I believe that my blood flowing in her veins, my mother's blood flowing in her veins, my mother's blood flowing in her veins, and that of her Congolese father would have anchored her. Now there's a stamp, La Mulâtresse Solitude. But did this same country not just say slavery was not the gravest crime against humanity?
No, they abstained.
And what does abstain mean?
We're still thinking about it.
What is to think about? Pay attention. Today, the UNESCO has included me in their educational materials, not as a myth, not as a rumor, but as history, as a figure used to teach future generations about resistance, about slavery, about the role that Black women played, have always played, will continue to play in our struggle and in our victory. So I say to all of you, daughters, my sons, first, thank you for listening.
No, thank you for coming.
Do not underestimate our memory. Do not underestimate African ancestral memory. Did not the lady you spoke with last week tell you that?
Yeah. Continuation.
Do not forget, do not put aside cultural memory. Do not put aside spiritual memory. Those things that come to you in your dreams, do not set them aside. For in that memory is the seed, not just of rebellion, of our freedom, of our victory. Shall be well with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it shall be well. And like you said, live free or die. That's the mantra, the takeaway mantra for tonight. And again, we continue to do this here series. Yeah, for those people who are just joining us, we do this reenactment every week. It's Women in Resistance. It's showcasing women of African ancestry who have helped pave the way for where we are today. We continue to do the work, and we thank Madam Solitude for coming through. And we take correction and not call you La Mulâtresse Solitude, but Guadeloupe Solitude. Yes, they will try and rewrite the story. What they try to do is co-opt your story and imbue it with their version of what they consider to be sane enough for their audience to listen to. Because the moment they don't capture the story and the story runs away from them, power lost. And nothing speaks to a colonizer than the ability to shape narratives, which is what we constantly bulk away against here. And so, yes.
Can I say
Sure,
one thing?
Sure, you can.
Because I think that sometimes when you think of my death in 1802, it can, for some people, might still seem like, well, this is in the past, ancient history. Pray tell, what is the state of Black pregnant women where you live, wherever you are in the world today? The struggles look different, but are still the same.
Body autonomy is
They're
still an
not
issue.
Black women dying at higher levels during childbirth in countries where other women are not dying at those same levels? Why
Still
is
the
that?
case.
Do you know that in our community, the most dangerous time for a woman is when she's pregnant? I say all of these to say, whether you're talking to me or talking to any of my other sisters in the resistance, we're not here for your entertainment. We're not here to tickle your fancy. We're here to help you remember and to connect the dots from before my time to now, the present. And depending on the actions we take will determine the future. So think carefully. When you get one of us to come speak with you, what changes for you as a result of a conversation truly held from the other side? Because I am no longer here physically with you. What changes? And if nothing does, that is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've come to the end of this week's episode of Women in Resistance. Next week, it will be the turn of Sarah Redmond Parker. Who she is, what she's about, I will find out in the course of next week's program. For tonight, thank you, Madam Solitude, for coming through. To the audience, thank you for your participation, all the chats, and what have you. And if this is your first time here, do hit the subscribe button. And I understand now when you watch the videos, you can also do a bit of hyping. And so thank you all for coming through. Until next week, it's good night and God bless. That is it for this episode of Women and Resistance. Thank you for joining us in amplifying the voices of women who challenged injustice and changed the course of history. Be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. Together, remember, we honor the past, act in the present, and shape the future. Until next time, stay inspired and stay in resistance.